So hello, everyone. Welcome to the first in a series of interviews that we're going to be doing. My name is Rana Nejem. I'm author of When in the Arab World, an insider's guide to living and working with Arab culture, and founder of Yarnu, the art of social intelligence. And today I'm very excited to start this series of interviews talking to Dawn Metcalfe, who is also the author of three books, not just one. She wrote Managing the Matrix, Hard Talk, and The Possibilities Project. And the launch of her fourth book was unfortunately postponed because of the COVID situation. Dawn is the amazing, vibrant, and very talented. Based in Dubai, she is the MD of PDSI. With her team, she helps individuals, teams, and organizations to change behavior and so change culture through training, coaching, and facilitated workshops. She speaks regularly at industry and private events and writes for many publications, including the Harvard Business Review. Dawn, I'm so glad to have you here with me today.
Absolutely my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for giving me your time. I know you're based in Dubai, but I know that right now you are grounded, not stranded, in Sri Lanka. And I see what a beautiful space to be working from.
Yes, this is not Dubai behind me here, and this is all real. This isn't fake either. So I'm in the beautiful island of Sri Lanka, about 20 minutes from the airport. Right, what I'm looking at right now, about 6 feet away from me, is the beautiful lagoon with animals and birds and all kinds of potential distractions. So whilst everybody else is being distracted by the World Wide Web, I'm being distracted by iguanas and water monitors and heron and all kinds of.
You're one of the lucky ones. You're one of the lucky ones. Great.
Very, very much.
Well, Dawn, I know that you and I can chat for hours and hours, and I never get bored. But I'm going to try to keep it focused and to keep it short and sweet for our audience here. You've traveled and lived in about 8 different countries now, and we know that being culturally intelligent does not mean that you have to shed your skin, that you have to give up your own values and go native. It's about being culturally intelligent, is about adjusting the externals, just adjusting the behavior to suit the situation with the intention of communicating respect. Which aspect of your personality, your character, or your behavior did you have to adjust most in order to be culturally intelligent, to be able to adjust to the 8 different countries all over the world where you lived and worked?
Well, look, first of all, I think I was very, very lucky. I grew up in what was at the time a very monocultural environment. Ireland back in the 70s and 80s was a very, very monocultural environment. Basically, everybody looked like me. In fact, I was the minority because of the religion of my family. To some extent, we were the minority. But I was very lucky in that my parents always had foreign exchange students come and visit. And then, of course, as soon as I turned 17, I headed off to the UK, where I then lived and worked before going to France, Spain, Japan, China, Thailand, back to the UK, and then eventually making it out to Dubai in 2008, of all years, to make it to Dubai. And I think what I learned, I think the most important thing I learned was on the very, very first day that I arrived in the UK. And I was standing in the halls of residence, in the kitchen in the halls of residence, and another student came in, and I asked that student to hand me the scallions and the sliced pan from the press. And this person looked at me and said, "What is it talking about?" And this person was a native English speaker, by the way, and as of course am I. But a scallion are spring onions, a sliced pan is a loaf of bread, and a press is a cupboard. And in that moment, I realized that I can, with all of the best will in the world, be thinking I'm communicating to this person, and I am. I'm just not communicating with that person. So I think what became very clear to me was that I had to change my vocabulary to begin with in order to be able to communicate, but also sometimes play a part. So I remember a great example. I was in Japan and I was teaching, and I think I'd been there maybe 2.5 years. And one of my colleagues, a very close colleague, said to me, "You know what's amazing about foreigners is you're all so expressive." And I said, "Well, you know, it's not that we're all so expressive. It's that all the foreigners that you meet don't speak great Japanese and are teaching English. So by definition, we're like, do you like tea or coffee? We don't talk like that normally to each other. And that was a really interesting moment. But I think everywhere you go, you learn something new. So when I went to England, it was, oh, we share the same language, but we're not communicating. And then France and Spain was, gosh, these places are very close, but it's an entirely different way of looking at the world. And then Japan, I didn't even know what I didn't know in Japan. I remember trying to buy mustard in Japan, and mustard in Japan is not in yellow or brown packaging. It's in whatever packaging they have. So there were no clues, and I didn't know what I didn't know. By the time I got to China, I was a lot more clued up insofar as I knew what I didn't know. But then I was in probably the most extreme position I've ever been in. And then going to Dubai, of course, the most multicultural place on the planet. And with all due respect to what you're doing, Rana, and we're talking about Arabic culture. Yeah. Arabic culture in Dubai is important. Of course it is. It's the UAE, it's an Arab country. But there are so many other cultures to take into account at the same time that it's a different challenge entirely.
Definitely. And Dubai is a very unique city. It's not really a kind of an Arab country. We refer to it as Planet Dubai, which everything there is completely different from anywhere else. Yeah, and so the communicating is the first thing that one has to adjust to when you're going from one culture to the other. And we tend to be using the same words, thinking that we're saying the same thing, but it's completely different. I found that very interesting. When I was working with the British Embassy, and we'd see, you know, as Arabs, we look at the Brits and the Americans, they both speak English, and they're both the same, so their cultures ought to be very much the same. And it was hilarious to see the differences between the American and the British culture and how things are done.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, for expats, for non-Arab expats going to the Middle East, to the Arab world, maybe we think the same thing. It's like, well, Saudi, Abu Dhabi, Amman, Muscat, how different can they be? Oh, very different, like entirely different worlds, of course.
Yes.
But I don't think many people outside understand that. And to your point about Dubai, like, I want to be clear, there is absolutely an Arabic culture in Dubai, and the UAE is an Arab country, but it's an Arab country that has Arabs from so many different parts of the world there, and then the rest of us, the non-Arabs, from lots of other places.
Definitely, which makes it a very unique place, Dubai in particular. So, and you said that, of course, when we talk about the Arab world is not one big lump. It's made of 22 different independent countries, each with its own unique culture and each with its own unique traditions. But there is this sort of thread of commonalities that ties us together in the main motivators of behavior that are based in the Islamic religion and also in the Bedouin culture. So moving after all of these travels, moving to Dubai, which aspect of the Arab culture did you find most difficult to accept or to adjust to? Was it
so in some ways,
or there's so many things I can think of.
So many. Like in some ways I was very lucky because I didn't know anything. I came to Dubai with 10 days notice. So I didn't have time to think about it and to worry about it. And so I just turned up with no preconceptions. I hadn't even read Don't They Know It's Friday? I mean, I literally knew nothing. I did not know that I could take a taxi from Dubai to Abu Dhabi. That's how little I knew. And I turned up, and I think, like, of course, as we've said, Arabic culture is different in other places, but also it changes over time. Like any other culture, it evolves, right? You take an 85-year-old Saudi and a 25-year-old Saudi, you're going to get different ways of looking at the world. But there are some things I think that come through. So one thing that I wish I'd known about was Arabic hospitality. So very early on, I needed to go on a trip to Saudi, and I was doing some work in Abu Dhabi. And obviously I didn't have an abaya, and I needed a swish abaya because I was going to Saudi. So I asked the ladies in Abu Dhabi if they could give me some advice as to where I should go to buy an abaya. And this is probably completely obvious to you what happens next, but it was a shock to me. They turned up the next day with 3 abayas for me. I said, no, no, that's... And that was a horrible position to be in. But also, now I've got a bias, so that's nice.
Explain what happens. So what happens is that the Arabs in general are very generous, and whenever you
yes, never say you like something. If you say you like something to an Arab, they will give it to you, and then you have to leave their house with things, and it's hard. And what I want to do in that situation is fight back with another present. But then I know how that's going to end up. They're going to fight back, and we're going to end up in this present situation for the rest of my life, and I'm going to be bankrupt. So what I suggest is do not point to things and say you like them. The second thing that really I struggle with this is I'm somebody who gets up early in the morning, and then I stay awake until I go asleep early in the evening. And the Arab culture, clearly, no. I mean, I'm on the opposite side of the world from everybody else. So the idea that you would have a meeting at 10 o'clock at night, which is perfectly normal, I find that very, very confusing. By 10 o'clock at night, I'm wrapped up, in my duvet. The idea of meeting strangers or indeed friends at 10 to talk about anything is weird. And then maybe the third thing is, and I hesitate to say it, but punctuality. So to your point about words meaning different things in different places, I'm a Western European, and even by Western European standards, I'm crazy punctual. When I say punctual, I mean I'm there 10 minutes early. Late is on time. And so that's not how the average Arab sees the world when it comes to timing. So I've had to adjust to that, to remind myself that this is not personal, this is not anything to do with respect for my time, anything like that. But that is a continuing challenge. I think from the point of view of punctuality, Japan was my soul city, my soul country. I'll tell you a funny story. I was at a conference in Dubai, and it was a 3-day conference, and it was supposed to start at 9 o'clock, and it was maybe 12 minutes past 9. And the guy sitting next to me in the room, and he's getting very, very agitated. And I said, is everything okay? And he said, we're late. And I said, well, I mean, yeah, but like 11 minutes into a 3-day conference, and he went, it's unacceptable, it's just ridiculous. And he got very, very angry. And I said, how long have you been in town? And I was expecting him to say, oh, I've flown in from San Francisco this morning, or I moved here 3 weeks ago, or whatever. And he said, oh, I've lived here 16 years.
Oh my goodness.
Right? That's what I said. I said, how are you not dead? How are you not dead from like high blood pressure? How have you not had a stroke? And he said, he mentioned that he worked for, I can mention it. He said he worked for DHL. And so obviously the DHL culture is very, very focused on timings. So it did interest me that corporate culture was able to outweigh the Arab approach to timekeeping. But yeah, they're my 3 things.
Yes, yeah, that is true. It's they say that the organizational culture is just a reflection of the wider culture of the country wherever you are, but it's not necessarily so. So it really does depend on the field that you're working in. But there might be some things that's kind of seeped through. If not in punctuality, maybe in the approach of how the concept of faith and fate might be affected.
Yeah, or conflict and speaking up, which is something that I'm obsessed by. But I genuinely believe that you can supersede a national culture. If I didn't believe that, there's no way I would have written the book that's no longer, that hasn't been published, which is all about culture and how you can create a culture.
Yes, yeah. So it is all about behavior. It's and we say that the best thing to do when you are moving to a new culture, to avoid culture shock, and which is something that happens to everyone regardless of how prepared or how well traveled you are. It's when the reality does not match the expectations of what you had in mind, what you're used to as normal. The effect of normal completely changes. And it's the best way is to prepare yourself and to know as much as you can about that culture.
I think that's true, but I think it's also fair. I remember being very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Not angry, but quite upset with people saying to me, oh, you need to watch out for culture shock. And my reaction was, look, I'm not an idiot. I'm getting on a plane to go to China. I know that's not going to be the same culture. I'll be fine. That's not going to be a shock. And then what I realized was that I think it's a really bad name for a process that everybody goes through, which is, as you say, getting there and going, okay, well, I knew this theoretically, but in reality, it is weird that these people are making me take off my shoes. It is weird that these people have got such a strong reaction to me showing the soles of my feet. It's weird that I'm not allowed to put my chopsticks into the rice bowl. It's those minute by minute things that you just go, well, I mean, okay, I get it here, but come on, you're not serious. And I think that's the moment that it becomes real. I remember being in Japan and I had this really good friend. I knew her so well. And I was wearing these boots and they were long boots that had to be tied up, like with eyelets.
Uh-huh.
And it had taken me 10 minutes to put these bloody things on. And then she came to pick me up and I realized I'd left my keys inside. So I had to go back in. And because I knew her so well, I just looked at her and went, shh, and sneaked into, remember, my own house with shoes on. And she freaked out. And it was that moment I was like, oh no, this is real. This is actually real in their head. Just as real as to me, my culture is. This is real. They're not making it up. And I think no matter where you go, you always go through that process of, no, it's true. It's true. No, they do think differently. Yeah, exactly. Even people I like think differently.
Exactly. And it's all, the key is to understanding the reasons behind it. Why is this happening? Because it's not just about the thing. And otherwise you think it is weird. It's weird that they're so attached to this thing. But when you understand the motivator of behavior, it's not about this. It's about what it symbolizes, what it communicates. And once you understand that, then there's more of the cultural learner rather than the cultural critic. And then
yeah, and
stressful.
Exactly. And it's understanding that people make sense to themselves. Nobody behaves weirdly in their own eyes. Everybody's behavior makes sense to themselves. So what you've got to try and do is get inside there and go, well, okay, explain it to me and understand it without trying to question it, without challenging it. Understanding it without necessarily accepting it for yourself, but accepting that that's how the other person sees the world.
Yes, exactly. And understanding that it's your way is not necessarily the only way, and it's definitely not the only right way. That there are very different ways getting to the same point, which is basically just communicating respect and appreciation. So after all of this experience that you've had, and how long have you been in Dubai? And how long?
12 years now.
12 years, right. So what is one thing that you now know as a result of that experience that you wish you knew when you first came to this part of the world?
Apart from the fact that Hindi, Urdu, or Tagalog would have been a lot more helpful to learn than Arabic. I'm not for any other reason than that all the Arabs I know speak such beautiful English. I think maybe one of the things is, maybe again, ironically, given what we're talking about, which is culture, and that's not to think too much about culture. So yes, we need to acknowledge it, but also we can't assume that because this person is Jordanian or Saudi or Emirati or Irish, that they're necessarily going to think in a particular way. Yeah. So yes, acknowledging that overall culture, but then genuinely trying to understand those people as individuals, because culture is only one of the filters that changes how we see the world, right? Everybody in the world can come from the same city. Everybody can come from Amman. But if you have different education, different parents, different religions, whatever, you're going to see the world differently. And I think Harvard Business Review did some interesting research on this, or published some interesting research on this, which was that with cross-cultural negotiations, one of the things that can go wrong, ironically, is that people pay too much attention to the culture. And they say, okay, I'm about to go into a room with a Japanese person and an Indian. And I know that Japanese people don't make eye contact and Indian people care about hierarchy. So I'm going to assume this about my people before I go in. And okay, yeah, you might want to know this is likely, but you also want to question that as you go in and learn about those people as individuals. And I've certainly found that in Dubai, in the UAE in general. You know, I might meet a middle-aged Arab man who should, by all rights, think in a certain way and behave in a certain way, and then he'll say something that just blows my mind and surprises me entirely. And that's the joy, right?
That is the joy. That is the joy. And that is what cultural intelligence is. It's about being intelligent about it. It's knowing what the motivators of behavior are, what the background is, but then to take that information and to use it intelligently, not by creating more labels and boxing people in stereotypes. It's always remembering and focusing that you're always dealing with individuals, and every person has his own unique self-culture, his own unique way of doing things. The background will affect that person in one way or another, but we don't deal with cultures, we deal with people, definitely.
Exactly.
So in closing, tell us one thing that is very unique to the Irish culture or Irish tradition that maybe other people around the world might think strange or...
Well, I'll connect one thing to the Arab culture, which is as often as the Arabs say inshallah, we say God willing.
Oh, okay. Right.
I mean, I say inshallah when speaking in English to people who have no connection to the Middle East now. And on a couple of occasions, people have said, really? And I've had a bit of pushback. As in, from my country, we would say it all the time, God willing, God willing, God willing. The other thing that the Irish do, and I think the Arabs tend to do this as well, Lebanese are a great example of this, is we have a diaspora who look after each other.
Yeah.
That sense of where you come from really does make a difference. And in fact, when I set up my business in Dubai, I walked into the Irish Business Network, having done nothing Irish since leaving Ireland at the age of 17. So that's a lot of years. And then went into the Irish Business Network going, hello, bejesus begarden, how are you lads? Would you ever help a fellow Irish woman out? And they did. Yeah, thank goodness for that. We like that part of the Irish culture.
That's fantastic. Yes, yeah, there is a lot of similarities with others. Yes, that's true. Yes, true. Thank you so much, Dawn. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
You have the rest of the day to enjoy the beautiful nature behind you.
Well, Rana, given that we're in Sri Lanka, I'm going to say to you in Sinhalese, Bahoma Stuti, Ibawan.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Regina, for being with us. Thanks a lot, Dawn.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Ma salama. Bye-bye.